The morning is not just a time on the clock. It is a spiritual opportunity loaded with destiny. Scripture shows us that God himself works with mornings, releasing mercy and instruction at the break of every new day. When you wake up, you are stepping into a fresh canvas, a territory that has not yet been shaped by events, emotions, or encounters. If you ignore this moment, something else will define it for you. I have learned that many people struggle all day, not because the day was evil, but because they never took charge of it at the beginning. Beginnings carry authority, and whoever controls the beginning often influences the outcome. There is a reason the enemy tries to flood minds with fear, weariness, or distraction immediately after waking up. It is a strategic attempt to seize the morning before you do. But when you rise with spiritual understanding, you realize that the morning responds to instruction. Like the sun obeys the command of God, your day is designed to respond to faith-filled declarations. When you lift your eyes to God at dawn, you are not just praying. You are aligning time with purpose. You are declaring that this day will not drift aimlessly, but will move according to divine order. I have seen in my own journey that when mornings are surrendered to God, outcomes begin to change. Days that once felt heavy become lighter. Decisions that once seemed confusing become clearer. This is because the spirit is most receptive in the morning. Before the noise of life becomes loud, God speaks with clarity. If you learn to listen and speak back in agreement with him, you will discover that the morning becomes a gateway through which wisdom, peace, and strength flow into the rest of your day. There is a dangerous mistake many believers make. They allow the day to take control of them before they take control of the day. From the moment you wake up, forces are already in motion. Demands, pressures, expectations, and unseen spiritual influences. If you rise passively, those forces will define your emotions, your decisions, and even your outcomes. But authority in the kingdom is not automatic. It must be exercised. Taking spiritual authority in the morning means you refuse to be a victim of circumstances and instead position yourself as a partner with God in shaping your day. I have discovered that authority is released through intentional speech. Silence in the morning is not humility, it is surrender to randomness. When you open your mouth in prayer and declaration, you are announcing to the heavens and the earth that you are awake, alert, and aligned with God's will. You are declaring that fear will not dominate your thoughts, that confusion will not sit on your mind, and that delays will not hijack your assignments. The spiritual realm responds to clarity, and clarity is established when you speak God's word with conviction. Many people wait until problems arise before they pray, but wisdom teaches us to legislate before chaos shows up. When you take authority early, you are setting boundaries in the spirit. You are saying this far and no further. Challenges may still arise, but they will meet resistance, not surprise. This is how believers walk through busy schedules, hostile environments, and difficult seasons with calm confidence, because they already took charge in the presence of God before stepping into the noise of the day. Every day carries decisions, and every decision is influenced by an atmosphere. Many people do not fail because they lack intelligence or effort. They fail because their environment was never aligned. When you pray in the morning, you are not only speaking to God, you are adjusting the spiritual climate around your life. Alignment is the hidden advantage of those who command their mornings. It is the difference between striving and flowing, between confusion and clarity. When your spirit is aligned, even complex decisions become lighter because heaven is involved. I have seen moments where a single decision made in haste produced months of regret. And I have also seen how one moment of alignment in prayer saved years of struggle. Morning prayer is a moment of recalibration. You bring your plans, your desires, and your concerns before God and allow His wisdom to correct what is out of order. This is not weakness, it is spiritual intelligence. When God aligns your heart, He also aligns your steps, your words, and your responses throughout the day. Declarations in the morning are powerful because they shape expectation. When you declare that your steps are ordered by the Lord, you begin to move with confidence. When you declare that you have the mind of Christ, confusion loses its grip. These words are not empty affirmations. They are agreements with divine truth. As you align your destiny through prayer and declaration, you will notice that opportunities begin to recognize you, distractions lose their appeal, and your day begins to cooperate with the purposes of God. Light is not just brightness. Light is clarity, direction, and dominion. Darkness is not always evil. It is often uncertainty, fear, and lack of direction. When you command your morning, one of the first things you must release is light. You are declaring that this day will not be governed by confusion, hidden traps, or unseen dangers. I have learned that many battles are avoided simply by commanding light early. When light enters a space, darkness does not negotiate, it disappears. In the same way, when divine illumination governs your day, wrong decisions lose their power over you. Favor is another force that must be intentionally invited. Favor does not just make people like you, it causes doors to open without struggle and resistance to turn into cooperation. When you speak favor into your morning, you are asking God to go ahead of you, to touch hearts you will encounter, and to align circumstances in your favor. I have walked into rooms where I had no natural advantage, yet things shifted because favor was already waiting there. That is the mystery of commanding your day before you meet its demands. Protection is also not something you assume. It is something you enforce. The world is filled with both visible and invisible dangers, but when you declare God's covering in the morning, you are placing your day under divine surveillance. You are saying that no accident, no evil plan, no unexpected calamity has permission to manifest. When strength is declared early, weariness does not easily overwhelm you. Even when challenges arise, you find reserves of grace you did not know you had because you invited heaven's supply before the day began. Consistency is what turns a spiritual principle into a lifestyle. Many people pray in the morning only when they feel pressure, but lasting victory comes when prayer becomes a habit, not an emergency response. Building a morning altar is about creating a sacred routine where God always has your first attention. It may start with a few minutes, but what matters is the posture of your heart. When you consistently meet God at the start of the day, you are telling your spirit what truly governs your life. I have noticed that whatever you honor consistently gains influence over you. When you honor God with your mornings, your sensitivity to His voice increases. You begin to discern quicker, respond wiser, and recover faster from challenges. The altar you build daily becomes a place of renewal, where strength is restored and burdens are exchanged for grace. Over time, you realize that you are no longer struggling to survive the day. You are walking through it with confidence and peace. A consistent morning altar also trains your discipline. It teaches you to value alignment over convenience. There will be days when your body resists and your schedule feels tight, but those are often the days when the altar matters most. As you remain faithful, you will see patterns change. Confusion gives way to order, anxiety gives way to calm, and repeated battles begin to lose their intensity. This is how quiet mornings with God produce loud testimonies in public life. There is also a dimension of commanding your morning that has to do with spiritual sensitivity and discernment. When you consistently appear before God early, your spirit becomes sharp. You begin to sense warnings before danger shows up and receive instructions before confusion sets in. Many people fall into traps not because they are careless, but because they were spiritually dull at critical moments. Morning fellowship with God sharpens your perception. You begin to know when to speak and when to stay silent, when to move and when to wait. This sensitivity is a product of intimacy, not effort. I have learned that God often gives quiet instructions in the morning that later save you from loud problems in the afternoon. A gentle nudge not to take a certain route, a calm restraint from responding emotionally, or a simple instruction to delay a decision. These are the dividends of early alignment. When you command your morning, you are positioning yourself to receive divine intelligence. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional because you are no longer guessing, you are being guided. As this sensitivity grows, confidence replaces anxiety. You may not know everything that will happen in the day, but you know the one who knows. That assurance changes how you walk, talk, and respond to pressure. You stop panicking over uncertainty because your spirit has already been anchored in God's presence. This is how believers remain calm in storms, not because storms do not come, but because their mornings train them to trust divine guidance over human understanding. Another powerful effect of commanding your morning is the authority it gives you over your emotions. Many believers love God sincerely, yet they are ruled by how they feel, because emotions were never submitted at the start of the day. When you wake up and immediately acknowledge God, you are reminding your soul that it is not in charge, God is. This simple act brings your mind, will, and emotions into alignment with your spirit. As a result, reactions that once controlled you begin to lose their grip. I have observed that emotional instability often comes from spiritual neglect. When the soul is not anchored early, it searches for stability in circumstances, people, or outcomes. But when you give God your morning, He establishes a deep inner calm that is not easily shaken. You may still feel pressure, but it no longer overwhelms you. You may still face disappointment, but it no longer defines you. This emotional mastery is not self-control alone, it is the fruit of divine order. As you continue to command your mornings, you will notice a change in how you respond to provocation. Words that once offended you lose their sting. Delays that once frustrated you no longer derail your peace. This is because your emotions have been trained to take instructions from the Spirit, not from circumstances. Over time, this produces a believer who is steady, discerning, and resilient, someone whose strength comes not from external control, but from daily submission to God at the start of every day. There is a generational dimension to commanding your morning that many people overlook. When you establish a pattern of seeking God early, you are not only changing your own life, you are laying a spiritual template for those connected to you. Children learn more from what they observe than from what they are told. When they see consistency, discipline, and reverence for God in the morning, it silently shapes their understanding of priority and dependence on God. What you practice privately becomes a legacy that speaks loudly over time. I have seen how families are stabilized not by wealth or comfort, but by spiritual order. A home where the morning begins with prayer becomes a place of peace even in difficult seasons. Conflicts reduce, clarity increases, and unity strengthens because God is invited to govern the atmosphere daily. Commanding your morning is not just personal devotion, it is spiritual leadership. You are teaching those around you that life is safest and strongest when God is first. As this pattern continues, testimonies begin to multiply. Doors open unexpectedly, favor follows consistently, and wisdom becomes evident in everyday decisions. People may not understand the source of your peace or confidence, but heaven recognizes the altar you have built. When you command your morning with God, your life becomes evidence that divine order works. Your days begin to speak for you, and your consistency becomes a silent sermon that draws others toward the power of a disciplined, God-centered life. Beyond personal blessing, commanding your morning positions you to walk in purpose with clarity and direction. Many believers move through life reacting to circumstances chasing opportunities or trying to recover from mistakes without realizing that the day itself is a battlefield of spiritual influence. When you begin your morning with God, you are setting the day's agenda according to heaven's will rather than human whim. You are declaring that your steps, words, and decisions will align with your destiny, not just with convenience or pressure. I have learned that clarity often comes in the quiet hours before activity begins. When the world is still and the spirit is attentive, God speaks with precision. Directions that would later seem confusing become obvious. Choices that would seem heavy become light. And the next steps in your assignments or relationships become illuminated. Commanding your morning ensures that divine foresight governs your actions, reducing mistakes and increasing confidence in every interaction. Furthermore, mornings determine momentum. A day that begins in alignment with God tends to flow with purpose, while a day that begins in distraction or neglect often struggles for progress. When you set the tone spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, the rest of the day responds. Tasks are completed efficiently, relationships are navigated wisely, and challenges are faced with courage rather than panic. The morning is the first mile of a marathon, and how you run it shapes the entirety of your journey. By commanding it with God, you ensure that every step moves you closer to fulfillment, divine favor, and victory. Commanding your morning also strengthens your faith muscles, transforming belief into action. Faith is not passive. It grows when exercised consistently, and the morning provides the perfect arena for this spiritual training. When you declare God's promises, speak His word over your day, and submit your plans to His guidance, you are actively practicing trust. This repeated alignment between declaration and expectation builds a resilience in your spirit that carries you through challenges, uncertainties, and opposition. I have noticed that faith established in the morning acts as a protective shield. When difficulties arise, your confidence in God's provision prevents panic. When unexpected setbacks appear, your trust in His timing allows patience instead of frustration. This is why mornings are more than just a routine. They are a rehearsal for victory. Each prayer, each declaration, and each moment of attentiveness equips you to face the day with a steady heart, prepared to respond from strength rather than reaction. As this pattern continues, it transforms not just isolated days, but your entire life trajectory. Your mornings become a foundation for consistency. Your actions begin to mirror your declarations, and your victories become predictable because they are rooted in spiritual principle. Commanding your morning is ultimately about partnership with God. It is entering each day as a co-laborer with the Creator, exercising authority where He has granted it, and walking confidently in the assurance that what has been aligned in the Spirit cannot be overturned by circumstances. Over time, this practice produces a believer whose life is marked by peace, power, and persistent progress, proving that disciplined mornings with God create unstoppable momentum.